Ever wondered why a lot of gamers still cling to laptops even though desktop PCs can deliver roughly 30% more frames per second on the same titles? It turns out that many people don't realize how much raw horsepower you can squeeze out of a well-balanced tower, especially when it's built around the newest 13th Gen Intel chips. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. And today I'm taking a close look at the HP OMEN 45L that pairs that chip with an RTX 4070 Ti. First off, the OMEN 45L feels like a desktop that was designed for both a hardcore gamer and a creator who needs to crank out 4K video on a deadline. The i9-13900KF brings 24 cores to the table, 8 performance cores and 16 efficiency cores, so even when you have a few demanding apps open, the system stays responsive. I tested it with a mix of modern titles like Cyberpunk 2077 and a video editing workflow in DaVinci Resolve, and the multitasking felt smooth. The CPU wasn't the bottleneck I'd expected. That kind of headroom is handy if you're streaming, because you can have OBS running your game, plus a web browser for chatting with the audience, all without the dreaded stutter. Memory is another area where the OMEN really shines. It comes stocked with 16 GB of Kingston Fury DDR5, and because DDR5 runs at higher frequencies than DDR4, you get quicker data transfers that shave seconds off load times. In a practical sense, that means your game assets pop in faster, and when you're rendering a timeline in Photoshop, the program responds almost instantly to brush strokes. If you ever need more, the tower's interior layout is fairly generous. There's room for 2 additional memory sticks, so you could bump the capacity up to 64 GB without a mess. Storage is a 1 TB solid-state drive, and it's not just about capacity. The NVIDIA SSD delivers rapid read/write speeds, which translates to those instant launch moments you love when you double-tap a game icon and it boots in a few seconds. I also appreciated the dedicated drive bay for an extra SSD or a traditional HDD if you ever want to archive large files without sacrificing speed. For creators, that extra space is a lifesaver when you're dealing with raw footage that eats up terabytes fast. Now, let's talk graphics. The RTX 4070 Ti is a solid middle ground card that can push high settings at 1440p comfortably, and even dips into 4K territory on less demanding titles. What's more, the card supports DLSS 3, so you can get smoother frames without cranking up the power draw. In my tests, a typical Battle Royale ran at a steady 115 frames per second with DLSS on, and the visuals stayed crisp. For anyone dabbling in VR, the headset felt stable, and the latency stayed low enough that motion sickness wasn't an issue. That makes the OMEN 45L a decent platform for both traditional gaming and newer immersive experiences. Cooling is often the Achilles heel of high-performance rigs, but HP's CryoS chamber inside the OMEN uses a combination of large fans and strategically placed vents to keep temperatures in check. Even under a stress test where I maxed out CPU and GPU, the CPU stayed around the mid-70s Celsius, and the GPU hovered just shy of 80. That thermal headroom means the system won't throttle during long play sessions or marathon editing nights. Plus, the quieter fan profile doesn't drown out your soundtrack, which is a subtle but welcome detail when you're trying to stay immersed. Practical day-to-day benefits pile up. The tower ships with Windows 11 Home, which has integrated gaming tools like the Xbox app and direct storage support, so you can load game assets directly to the GPU without overloading the CPU. If you're into modding, the OMEN's front panel offers easy access to USB-C and USB-A ports, so you can plug in external SSDs or a capture card without opening the case. And speaking of upgrades, the chassis uses a tool-free side panel, meaning you can swap out components in under 10 minutes, perfect if you decide to add a bigger GPU later on. Now, I'll be honest about the downsides. The machine's price point sits a bit higher than a DIY build with similar specs, so if you're comfortable building your own PC you might shave a few $100s off the total. Also, the default power supply is 650W, which is adequate for the current configuration but leaves little wiggle room if you plan to jump to a top-tier RTX 4090 down the line. It's not a deal-breaker, but something to keep in mind if you expect to push the hardware envelope soon. Overall, the HP OMEN 45L offers a balanced mix of raw performance, decent upgradability, and thoughtful cooling that makes it a solid choice for anyone who wants a ready-to-play system without the hassle of assembling parts. If you value a quiet workspace, quick load times, and the flexibility to stream while gaming, this desktop checks a lot of boxes. The pros: smooth multitasking with the i9, fast DDR5 memory, and effective thermals, outweigh the cons, which are mainly the cost premium and a somewhat limited power budget for future GPUs. If you're curious to see the exact configuration or grab one for yourself, just remember the link is in the description. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll catch you in the next video.